Welcome to Judica County. I'm your host, Taylor SCRUGGS-SMITH, and I'm here with Kimberly Lott, and we are both attorneys with Whitaker and Hamer, your law firm for life, with offices across the state of North Carolina. Today we want to touch on a little bit of DWI. This is an area that Kim primarily practices in. So you've seen the blue lights in your rearview mirror, the scary moments happened, and you got a ticket for a DWI. What should they do next?
Sure. And let me back up just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you get in a situation where you think an officer believes that you have been drinking and driving, there are some key things that you need to do first. So hopefully this will help prevent you from even having to call us in the first place. First of all, don't admit anything to the officer.
You don't speak to the officer?
You can be polite and you can be respectful, but you can tell him, I don't want to answer those questions right now. You do need to answer basic questions like, what is your name? Give him a copy of your license, but you don't have to answer any of his questions like, how fast were you going? Have you been drinking? When was the last time you had a drink? Do you think you're drunk?
I feel like nobody knows that they can do that.
Absolutely, and it's hard to do. Even if you know you can do it, it's really hard to say no to an officer in that situation because they're a person of authority, and most of us have learned, I need to talk to people who are in authority. But the best thing to do is don't admit anything. Secondly, a lot of people have the misconception that if they don't blow, if they don't use the breathalyzer, then they can't ever convict them of a DWI. That's not true. It is
knocking out all misconceptions here.
Trying to get rid of those misconceptions. First of all, there's two kinds of breathalyzers. One is the one that they do on the side of the road, and one is the one that they do if they take you downtown. The one that they do on the side of the road, that one is fine to not submit to because that one is not really admissible in court and nothing happens if you don't do that one. It just means that the officer has to base his arrest on other factors besides that. However, if you get taken downtown and they want you to submit to a breathalyzer downtown, it is my advice to go ahead and submit to that. There are a couple of reasons for that. One is if you refuse to submit to that breathalyzer, you will lose your license for a year, just off the bat.
A whole year?
A whole year. Pretty severe punishment. So you should submit to that one. If you think there are problems with that breathalyzer, that's my job when we get in court to try to combat that, to show that it wasn't correctly done or that the results are not accurate. But refusing to submit to that breathalyzer has a lot more implications to it.
So, and let's kind of move forward from that. So like all this has happened and you've gotten the charge. Now what do you do?
Call me. Call an attorney. I have seen there are people who believe that they can represent themselves in court on a DWI charge. I recently heard a judge who was asking somebody if they wanted what they wanted to do for an attorney, and the person didn't want an attorney. And the judge said, if you had to have a root canal done, would you do that by yourself? No. So get a lawyer. So you call us, and we will help guide you through the entire process of how to handle your DWI in court.
And I know we probably get this question like 20 times a day, but what are the possible sentences associated with a DWI? I know it depends, and it may change based on if it's your first or second, but a little generally, what are the possible consequences of that?
Right. So North Carolina has basically 6 levels of sentencing for DWIs. It's levels 1 through 5, 5 being the best outcome you could possibly expect. And then there's also a 1A that is the worst possible outcome. And I have had clients sentenced at all levels. If you're being sentenced at the 1A level, you are probably going to spend 3 years in jail. And I had one client who was sentenced to that. Fortunately, we were able to get him out on work release during that time, but he had to spend 3 years in jail. And that was as a result of having multiple DWIs in the past. He had a child in the car at the time. So there are a lot of factors that go into that. The way that North Carolina determines what level you get sentenced at, they look at aggravating factors and mitigating factors. So aggravating factors are bad factors, like high concentration of alcohol in your blood, having a child in the car. And mitigating factors are things such as you had a legal license at the time that you got stopped, you had a lower alcohol level, it's your first offense. So those are the levels. When it comes to, if you get a level 5, what they would expect from you is you could pay a fine, you pay court costs, you have to go get an alcohol assessment. You sit down with somebody and talk about your drinking and submit to any of the treatment that they recommend. You are automatically sentenced to 24 hours in jail. However, at that level, you can opt to do 24 hours of community service instead of that 24 hours in jail. And the biggest part of a DWI is the cost. Your insurance is going to go way up from getting a DWI.
Well, this has been tons of information, and we were just knocking out misconceptions, and we really appreciate your time coming on the show today to help us get this information out and maybe stop some of those misconceptions. We thank you for joining us on this episode of Judica County. If you find yourself in need of legal assistance with the DWI or any area of law, give us a call at 919-772-7000 or contact us via our website at WH.LAWYER. Again, we are Whitaker & Hamer, your law firm for life.